Hello, good morning. Today is Wednesday, September 7th.
September the 6th, 2022.
7th. You're
yes.
right, yeah.
7th.
We advanced today from yesterday, and we decided that we would start our discussion again this morning because we kind of got off on a few tangents the last time we started with the question of what brought you to discover the Ponte and the Twitter account at the very, very beginning. Mm-hmm. When was that for you? What brought you back? And what kept you coming?
So I discovered the Twitter account probably about 5 years ago. And it was through a friend of mine who was an experiencer as well. And he told me, do you realize that there is a group of extraterrestrials using Twitter? And I was like, are you kidding me? No way. Are you serious? And he said, yes. And he said, at Sandia Wisdom. And he told me about who the Ponte were and where they were from. And I decided to check it out. And so I went onto Twitter, and back in those days, it was only 4 of the Ponte. It was Tilcum, it was Drudy, Tani, and Radar. And they each kind of took different turns on the Twitter account speaking, and I spent a lot of time for the first 3 days just observing and listening to what they were saying and the responses that they were giving to different people, mm-hmm. and some of the different information that they were giving out. And the first thing that I noticed, because I was skeptical at the beginning, but it was the way that they were speaking. It was very not, I wouldn't say unemotional, but it was very concise with the wording and the clarity and the message that was being said in those very small tweets. And the information was concise. It wasn't emotive. It wasn't. Sometimes people will use words that that twist things emotionally, or you can tell that they're being emotively directed. The way they spoke was very unusual. It was very different. But it was also then like combination between that and the information that they were providing. I was really getting a sense that this was real, this was genuine, and this was really happening. Because it was unlike the way they spoke. It wasn't like anybody else who had spoken to before, and the way they talked.
Was it more detailed? Was it less vague? Was it more concise?
It was concise.
Okay.
And it was just. It had this otherworldly expression to it that the way they spoke didn't talk like what regular people did, because of how concise it was, the speaking, to not have any kind of misunderstanding of the message that was being said, with also being very right-minded, but also very neutral of not trying to be one's like left or right sided. It was very neutral.
Okay, and that sounds like them because of within the star nations of the Federation, the Ponte are considered a neutral nation. And so that makes sense that their communication is fair and balanced.
Balanced is a good word. Very balanced.
Could you tell whether or not this was coming through a translator and English was not their first language? You know how you can tell a not native speaker. Was it? And then the other thing is, did you find that there was information coming through the Twitter account that was different than other Twitter accounts that said or claimed or stated that it was information from an extraterrestrial source?
Well, the only I didn't get too much other sources, other than from my friend who had mentioned about the Ponte. Mm-hmm. So it was a very different experience going to the Twitter site. Mm-hmm. But the information, as I said, was very concise. But then when they started speaking about things like archaeoplanetography. And then I'm just like, what is this? And then explaining about how the history of the planet is actually physically written in the landscape, and then these examples were coming up showing the process of how it was being shown. I had never heard of this before, but it made sense at some level because of what I've learned over the years of consciousness and what I had been experiencing. When I had my awakening, August 21st, 2014. So I discovered the Ponte shortly after that. I think it was 2015.
Okay.
And then through there, that's when I started to private message at Sandia. Then private conversations started to take place between me and Tani and Radar. And Drudy. And then I remember Tani was saying that because they had been observing me and they were quite curious about me, and then she wanted to have those private conversations, and we were starting to get to know each other on a more intimate level of where we didn't have to worry about other people, what we were talking about. It was private conversation back and forth.